Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. This is the Kubernetes SIG Windows meeting for January 15th, 2019. And so this is being recorded, so please follow the normal Kubernetes contributor code of conduct for all of this. So I've got a couple things on the agenda here, but I know Aaron's got to run. And the first thing was talking about the 1.14 release. So do you want to go ahead and kick it off, Aaron?
Actually, I'm still trying to find my reading room. If you can give me a couple minutes. It feels like you had some things you wanted to talk about up front.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll go ahead and get started on it. So basically for the version for this next release, 1.14, Aaron's, of course, the release lead on this. But the ask this time around has been that all enhancements that are going in should have a Kubernetes enhancement proposal or KEP. So last week we filed, or I guess over the last couple of weeks, we've filed 2 KEPs, and those have both merged and are in the provisional state, which means we're still working on them. One is for the Windows node support overall. So we're going to take the existing enhancement issue that Michael's had open, number 116, but rather than putting the description of everything in there, we're just going to have that point over to the actual contents of the KEP. But we still need the issue there for tracking because there's no tool there's no like Kanban board for KEPs right now. The other one we have open is for the group managed service accounts, and that's the one that Jeremy and Deep have picked back up. And I did an initial review of that yesterday. A lot of the text is similar to what I had started, but of course it's been updated to match the implementation that was that's been discussed with SIG Auth. So I have links to both of those there in the meeting notes. But over the next couple of weeks, our goal needs to be to get the rest of the details that are needed in those finalized. So that way the list of reviewers that we've identified, whether it's individuals or SIGs, can basically LGTM a PR that takes it from the provisional to the implementable state, which is basically saying the design is closed. We all agree on what the contents of that are, which includes testing and release criteria. So any questions on that, on that process? Okay. Now that you find your room, Aaron, do you want to give some more details around the release process?
Sure. I did see somebody unmuted when you asked if there were any questions. Nope. Okay. Yep.
Did you have something, Deep?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, you were unmuted, so.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I used Brady Bunch mode so I can see what you all do. Plus, it's more fun that way. You get to see facial reactions. So, yeah, hi, I'm here in lieu of, hi, I'm Aaron of SIGBeard. I am your 114 release lead. I'm here in lieu of Claire Lawrence, who is your 114 enhancements lead. She was double booked today. We are at week 2 in the release cycle. Week 2 is traditionally when we start going out to SIGs and asking, hey, what are you planning on working on? This is so we can kind of have that plan represented as enhancements issues that are in the 114 milestone. And then we can kind of lock down what that plan is at enhancements freeze, which is the end of the month, Tuesday, January 29th. And Patrick, I think, kind of has been keeping his eye on the ball since a lot of this, I think, started from lessons we learned during 113. The goal here really is to make sure that we have the release team is interested in consuming a checklist, not thoroughly doing a deep technical dive on requirements that are listed in someplace we can check. So the KEP seems like the place that makes the most sense to me, since a KEP lists a lot of other motivations and details about a particular enhancement. And so my ask would be that there's some kind of test plan and that there's some kind of upgrade downgrade plan, just to understand what that all means. Do I have an example you can copy and paste? Sadly, no, I don't. This is kind of going to be an iterative process as we figure this out as a community. But I feel like I just saw enough vigorous of nodding of heads when I have said this statement over the past couple of months that people agree that it's time that we do this. So I am planning on discussing with SIG PM later today to look into like adjusting the template. And we might have to adjust it a couple more times, but I do think Patrick's goal of getting to implementable by the end of the month is kind of where we would like to get. Let's see here. Traditionally, this is also when the enhancements lead would ask you about stuff that was in the previous milestone. You don't have any enhancements issues in the previous milestone, so I don't have to do that. I would ask you about enhancements issues you have in the V114 milestone, but I think Patrick just did a good job of enumerating all of that, and he's kept me included on reviewing that test plan. And I just checking real fast to see if you have any other issues that are not milestoned. There's something for adding support for Windows container configuration in CRI. Is this something that's on anybody's radar here? I'll place the link in chat.
So I think that the use case that the person was asking for there was actually covered in the other cap. Oh, wait, no, sorry, this is different. Wait, hold on. Something's...
It says stable is 112, so did it already go out?
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm confused. It was maybe tagged as stable, but clearly it was punted out of 112 and then punted out of 113 as well, or never added back into 113. So I just...
Okay, let me do some digging into this one. I think this may be something that is potentially overly broad, because I think a few of these specific things have already been done. But I'll...
For what it's worth, I am about to go to SIG after this. This is just a day of 30-minute meetings, so thank you all for taking the time to talk with me. So I can ask them about this as well, because this seems like it kind of is broad in terms of we want CRI configuration stuff, and one of the container engines we want is Windows, and so what are the configuration options that we can expose for that?
I'll take a closer look at that one. But my initial thought is that it's overly broad, and we should probably cover the ones that are going to work end to end. One of the ones that's called out on there is security contexts, and that is the only field in security context is the one that's covered in the GMSA cap that we've already got linked there. So I'll take another look through it though, and it may be that we've sort of piecemealed this one apart and don't need the master issue anymore.
Sorry, I think that is really broad, and I'm not aware of any urgency to go through the config and just isolate Windows ones. I'm not against that, but I don't think we have bandwidth to tackle that this quarter. So maybe we'll deal with them case by case. For example, like the GMSA you just mentioned, that we can add something if it's needed, but maybe not go through the entire config and try to separate Windows out.
Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like I will try and summarize this discussion on that issue, because maybe we want to go ahead and close it. I think that's really all I had. Like I said, Patrick, you've been doing a great job of keeping your eye on the ball. Really, the idea with like making a checklist here is so that we collectively can agree on where the goalposts are, so that the release team can just make the call, rather than us having to adjust and iterate on the goalposts as we go. So part of me feels like maybe it's unrealistic to have those goalposts set in stone by enhancement freeze, but that we're going to probably aspire to have them set in something resembling stone nearer to code freeze, so that we can collectively agree, yes, this is worth it, or no, this isn't worth it. I don't know that SIG release is the body to make that final call, but I want to help make sure that we drive to a decision.
I would like to ask for clarification on upgrade downgrade plan. My understanding in the previous discussions was that was mostly focused around when there are things that, change, add or remove an API. Do we have a plan for being able to upgrade components in the right manner? And I haven't seen anything saying, so I mean, like SIG Windows, was basically formed effectively out of SIG Node in order to create Windows Node support. So when it comes to upgrading and downgrading the cluster, I don't see there being any cluster level API changes that are necessarily required. But I just want to understand is that the scope that you are looking for an upgrade and downgrade, or are you looking for nitty gritty details like here's how to install the kubelet?
So again, that's a really great question that I don't have a concise answer for. The reason I'm asking about upgrade, downgrade, this is another bit of process scarring or lessons learned from 113, where when CSI was going from beta to stable, it was uncovered that switching from one version of the drivers to the other would result in a complete loss of access to volumes so if you were on the GA version of it, you would lose access to the beta versions of it. So I'm not sure if I'm looking for like a test that automatically does upgrade or downgrade, but like, what are the considerations? What are the risks? What are the things you can and cannot support? You might think what does in-place upgrade even mean for Windows nodes? This is stuff like that, right?
Okay.
So again, like I apologize that I don't have a crisp answer, but I think like spending some time thinking about it will help us realize what it is that we're looking for.
Okay.
Anything else?
I didn't have anything else. Anybody else have questions?
Okay, cool. So like I said, I am your release lead. You can find me as spiffxp on GitHub, on Slack, at gmail.com, at google.com. Slack is the only one that notifies me during business hours. But I am here in lieu of Claire Lawrence, who is the enhancements lead for this release. So you'll be hearing more from her when it comes to shepherding these things around. I really appreciate you all taking the time to talk with me today. Thanks so much. Over to you, Patrick.
Yep. So I was finishing up the notes there. Okay. So next on the list here, I had a project management topic that was talking about we've basically been through multiple iterations of how we are tracking stuff, starting from initially Michael had a roadmap doc that was started in, 2016 or 2017 that sort of listed all the different features and considerations that were there for Windows. Once I joined, I wanted to start trying to split some of that stuff up so we could understand what was effectively like in the works and what had PRs going in GitHub. And so GitHub projects weren't a thing yet. And so I was actually using a Trello board to track what we were doing release by release. And last cycle for 13, I got some feedback that wasn't discoverable. And now we could host GitHub projects within the Kubernetes org. And so this was a topic that I wanted to discuss with Michael and Craig before we make a decision on it. But I think that probably the best way we could use this that would help SIG release would be to create a board per version and just say for version 14, here's all of the issues and PRs that we have, in flight, and be able to track, what's in progress, what's still on the backlog, and what's completed. So that would give people more of a dashboard type view. And so we would still need to track everything, or we'd still need to tag everything as 14 milestone, so it works with the other release queries. The question for I guess for within our SIG is, would having a 14 board be helpful, or should we just simply use the queries in GitHub and look at the count of things until it's 0? Does anybody have thoughts there? Saw a few head nods, but nobody's got anything specific.
Sounds okay to me, Patrick. The only thing is I would add the backlog port for everything that we want inside SIG Windows, or specifically for SIG Windows, and just pick them up from the backlog to different versions, maybe.
Okay. So I've got a project where I basically pulled every single issue in PR that was tagged SIG Windows. That's the one linked in the notes there. But after I did that, I basically realized what I had done was taken the output of a query and copied it into the board. So what would be what would you be looking for in a board that has a backlog of everything? Are you looking for prioritization? Are you looking for assignments? Like what kind of info would you get from there that's not in a normal query?
More about prioritization, what goes in where, or what does people actually want more, maybe.
Okay. And so if we had set priorities on things, would it change the order of issues that you're working on, or are you more focused on trying to understand what we're making, what's currently being worked on?
It would be the latter. I mean, it's nice to know what people are working on and what people are actually having issues on, etc. How many people are experiencing the same issue, and so on. It's basically an aggregation over all the and prioritization over the assignments.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look at this, Craig? Did you have any feedback on it?
Well, since I haven't been actively working on the project, my feedback is probably not terribly valuable. My first blush is that it gives me a good idea of what's in progress, what's been done, and what's still to do. And I think that's super valuable. Beyond that, I don't know enough to comment.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just curious because I didn't know if you had reviewed what was on there yet or not. Because I know you've been surveying the various queries and stuff that we have out there. So.
Absolutely, I think it's very handy to have one place to go to see what's left to do.
Okay.
From my point of view, great. I don't have a sense of priority yet, or a sense of whether or not the board can represent priority.
Okay.
In a clear way.
Okay. So I'll leave this on the agenda for next week because it sounds like so I copied stuff into the board. I did no prioritization. So let's sync with Michael, who's the other chair, and then I guess let's give prioritization a try on that stuff next week. Maybe aim to get the top, 10 or 12 most important things there. Although I think that if we were to pick the top 10 or 12, hopefully there are things that are already planned for or tagged for 14. But we could pick that up there just because I don't think I want to make a call on this without getting feedback from Michael on it too. But if anyone's got any other feedback on that or wants to help, please let us know. So we got 7 minutes left. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, I think definitely it's valuable for me as I've been in the SIG meetings for the past few weeks, of getting a better sense of sort of what are the things that we're focused on in building and improving. It definitely gives a good sense on those things. So that's
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. So the next thing on the list was Ben had something about the Kube Control Port Forward PR, and he had a networking question of some sort.
Yeah. So we implemented the port forward, or at least a lot of the port forward functionality. But one thing we realized was that on Linux, port forward actually allows you to forward to ports that are like only bound on localhost, so aren't actually exposed by the pod, but could just be accessed by another process inside the pod. And the approach we used was using NetSH in Windows and just forwarding, like creating a tunnel to the pod IP, and that won't work since if the process is bound to localhost, it's not listening on the pod IP interface. So I was just curious if anyone here, I reached out in Slack and didn't get any replies. So I was curious if anyone knew of any way to be able to do something similar to how they do it on Windows or on Linux, where they can actually get to the localhost interface.
So on Linux, my understanding was that I just read the kubelet code very briefly, but it looked to me like they were opening a local port within the kubelet and then using SOCAT to forward that to the pod's IP and port.
They use NSEnter, I guess, launches the SOCAT process inside
within the C group.
Yeah.
But the actual traffic flow was between localhost, because that's what the kubelet was listening on, and the pod IP. They're not opening it on an external interface, correct?
I mean, the interface of from within the container, the interface,
I mean, a host external interface. They're not saying host external IP port 2200 is being asked to.
No.
Okay.
But if from within the container, I guess you have an interface that's bound to the container IP, do you follow? I'm not sure if I'm explaining this quite correctly, but
I'm also not following them. So are you saying that you have an application inside the container and that's trying to bind to localhost inside the container?
It could. I'm saying that is a possibility, and I'm curious how if it would be possible to then get access from the host to that process, send traffic to that process.
So to clarify here, so Kube Control Port Forward is often used by devs, and so I can be on a remote machine where I've got a kube config, and so let's say I've got a container running over my Kubernetes cluster, and it's got the node or the .NET debugger running within that container. It's bound to a port owned by that container, but what I want to do is connect from my local machine, my laptop that I'm sitting on, authenticate using my kube config to the kube cluster, and then the kubelet actually sets up that port binding. So that way, all the tunneling is done over that authenticated channel. I'm not exposing it to the public internet.
Yeah. Right. So the external IP port should work, right?
Well,
but if it's.
But that's different. That's not the Kube Control Port Forward case.
But I thought you said you're going over the remote, right?
No, we're saying we're tunneling it through the Kubernetes API.
I can, I don't know, make some kind of example and share it offline, in Slack. So that we can.
Can you give me an example on the Linux and just give it an IP and then I can take a stab at it and get back to you?
Sure.
Yeah, my initial thought on this was that we could probably just add some Golang code in the kubelet itself that could find the pod IP on that local machine and the port and just bind directly to it. So it could basically adjust the firewall rules where it doesn't allow external connectivity, but it does allow the kubelet to talk directly to the container's IP and then just forward that back and forth as over
It
TCP.
depends on the network mode, Patrick. I mean, if it is a NAT network mode or L2 bridge, yes. But if it's an overlay, then we have a problem. But it really depends on the network mode.
So if it's overlay, you would need to basically create another virtual NIC.
Correct. On the VXLAN.
On the host.
Yeah. This is the same thing that we have been talking with SIG network, and they're rewording the little bit of the Kubernetes requirement, basically to say that if we support the host network mode, then you need to have a host to pod access. So if you have an interface on the same network as the pod network, then you can use that interface and bind your application to it and then access the container port. That should work.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to use like local host, I think that will not work because the local host is bound to the physical interface and not to the actual interface that we are creating for this network.
Yeah.
So let me understand the little bit of scenario from the Linux perspective, and then I should be able to give you either workaround or it's possible to solve or not.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have other topics for today?
Just one question for me, Patrick. How can I deploy a container D environment for 2019? We have a document on it.
So, sorry, could you repeat that? I heard, how can I deploy something in 2019, but I lost a few words there.
Container D on 2019.
Oh, okay. If you look at the meeting notes from last week, we have a link to Saswat's repo. I just pasted it in there, but he's working on steps there. The current problem is that the networking doesn't work. So if you follow the steps he has, that'll get you as far as being able to start a container. Just the networking is broken for now. And so I think the ETA was around the end of this month. And we'll probably be able to get that working with Flannel, because I think it's almost working, but like the Azure CNI plugin is going to need some changes, and I don't have an ETA on that yet.
But yeah, so let me clarify a little bit. It's the CNI changes that are pending, but we can add the Flannel CNI, and Alin, you can also use your CNI in those. The platform like networking portion is ready, so it's just the CNI portion of it is what pending.
The only thing I was thinking about, Dinesh, was removing the add call, the multiple add calls from the kubelet.
Yes, that is exactly that's where I'm also going. So there is no need to have two add calls with this support, and we already have a working Flannel CNI, and we will basically give that as an example to you so that you can follow the same thing in your CNI as well.
Well, we could do the same. The only thing I was thinking about after we test it, should we change the kubelet code? Because right now it's doing multiple calls.
So if I understand the question, should we change the kubelet code? Is that correct?
Yes, basically in the kubelet there is one add command every time.
Yeah, so we are doing this change for container D as of now, right? And there's nothing stopping from us to do the Docker shim change as well, but we can do it. but we can't remove that code. We have to support previous versions. So we will keep that code for previous versions, but RS5 on top of it, we can remove it. I think just because of
the thing is, thinking about the Kubernetes will only support 2019 onwards. Is that right, Patrick?
Alan, I'm not able to hear you, Alan. Can you speak up, please?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes,
Or a
please.
bit?
Yes.
So the idea would be that the kubelet should only work from 2019 onwards, if I remember correctly, Patrick.
Yes, that's correct. And so what we've been discussing over the last couple meetings is that we were going to focus on 2019 only. But before we can go remove those workarounds for the previous versions, based on what we just heard there, we would need to still make some changes to Docker shim and then get the CNI plugins updated so that we don't break our existing tests. So I think that's something that we could track as code cleanup as a maybe for version 14. It's going to depend on whether or not we get that other work done. It's not a must-have for version 14.
Exactly. I wouldn't put that as a requirement for 14. I mean, I would prefer to get the baking done in containerd validated and then do it for Docker shim.
I was thinking about version 15, but it's just something that we need to keep in mind, that we should do the cleanup after everything is merged. I mean, the Docker shim part, any CNIs that does that enhancement should do that enhancement and so on. Okay, that's all from me.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got to get over to the SIG node meeting now. Last call. Any last questions? All right. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.